Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So today we are dusting off a book that is, wow, over a century old, 1903 to be exact. But I have to say, reading it felt a little bit like looking in a mirror. A very uncomfortable high-definition mirror.
It's a fascinating text. And you're right about the mirror.
Yeah.
Most people know James Allen for As a Man Thinketh, which is sort of the grandfather of the self-help genre. But this one, Through the Gates of Good, it's different.
It's subtitled Christ in Conduct.
Right. And it's arguably much more radical.
It's definitely more intense. And the hook that really grabbed me, right at the start, was Allen's whole promise about simplicity. I feel like modern life is defined by complexity. Notifications, schedules, the news cycle. But Allen just starts by basically saying, life isn't complex, you are.
It's a bold opening. And you have to remember, 1903 wasn't exactly a quiet time either.
Right.
The Industrial Revolution was peaking, cities were overcrowding. And Allen, he sensed this massive public fatigue. He said people were hungry for truth naked and uninvolved.
Truth naked and uninvolved. I think I highlighted that 3 times. It sounds like he's just promising to cut through all the noise.
That is his entire mission here. He believes that people are drowning in theology and systems and opinions, but they're starving for actual peace.
Okay.
So this deep dive is really about his argument that goodness, it isn't just a behavior or, a personality trait. He frames goodness as a literal gate.
A gate?
Yeah, a barrier. On one side is the life of sorrow, where he thinks most of us live, and on the other side is a life of abiding peace.
And to get us there, he starts by clearing the clutter. He makes this distinction that I think is going to ruffle some feathers, even today. He separates religions, plural, lowercase r, from religion, singular, capital R.
This is the absolute foundation of his argument. Allen wasn't interested in attacking anyone's specific faith, but he was incredibly critical of what he called the perishable garments of religion.
So he's talking about creeds, dogmas, the rules of the church. He views those as just clothes.
Exactly, or fashion. He says these systems are woven from the threads of human opinion. And because they're human opinions, they change. They wear out.
They go out of style.
They go out of style. And if you look at history, people fight wars over which garment is the correct one to wear.
So if the creeds are just the outfit, what's the body inside?
The body is goodness. For Allen, true religion is simply sinlessness or a pure heart. His point is that you can have the most sophisticated theology in the world. You can memorize every scripture. But if you're spiteful or anxious or greedy, you're just wearing a fancy coat over a starving body.
It's like a call to stop debating the wrapper and just eat the candy bar.
It's a very secular way to put it, but it fits.
Yeah. He says men quarrel over the garments while the indwelling form of goodness is ignored.
We defend our team.
We defend our label, but we neglect the actual practice of love.
Which brings us to the core metaphor, the gate. The book is called Through the Gates of Good. But in this first section, The Gate in the Way, Allen makes it sound incredibly unappealing. He does not sugarcoat it. He's referencing the biblical idea, straight is the gate and narrow is the way.
Right.
This isn't a wide highway where you can drive your SUV filled with all your baggage. It's a turnstile.
He defines the gate as goodness, but the way to get there is renunciation. That is a heavy monastic word. It sounds like I need to sell my house and go live in a cave.
It sounds that way to our modern ears, for sure. But Allen is talking about psychological renunciation. He equates it with self-sacrifice.
Okay.
And here's the friction point. Allen argues that the thing blocking us from peace is our own self, our ego, our desire to be right, our desire to possess.
He quotes that famous line, "He that loveth his life shall lose it." And I think most people hear that and think, well, no, I don't want to lose my life. I like my life.
Allen would ask, do you? Do you really like the anxiety, the constant need for validation, the fear of losing what you have? When he says lose your life, he means losing that frantic, self-centered existence.
He uses the prodigal son story here, but he puts a really specific spin on it. He describes humanity as living in the far country of sin.
And this is where his writing gets visceral. He says, in this far country, we are trying to survive on swinish husks.
Swinish husks.
Yeah.
That is not a flattering image of my career goals and social media likes.
It's meant to be jarring. He's
Yeah.
saying that our base desires, greed, lust for power, the need to dominate, are actually garbage. They offer no nutrition.
We're starving.
We are spiritually starving while we gorge on them. The Father's house in the story isn't someplace in the sky. It represents our original innocence, the place of peace we came from.
So every moral rule, every thou shalt not, isn't a restriction, it's a map home.
Precisely. It's a call to leave the pig pen.
But knowing the map isn't enough. Alan draws this really hard line between the hearer and the doer. I felt called out here.
Oh, yeah?
Because I love reading books like this. I love nodding along and feeling wise. But Alan says that's totally useless.
He says it's worse than useless. It's a trap. He uses the analogy of building a house on rock versus sand. You can admire the eternal rock. You can write a PhD thesis on its geological composition.
Sure.
But unless you actually build your house on it, base your actions on it, the storm just washes you away. The intellect doesn't save you. Only action does.
He gives a specific example about forgiveness that really landed for me.
Only the doer of forgiveness tastes the sweets of forgiveness. That's the line.
It's so profound because it implies that the feeling of peace comes after the action, not before.
Right.
I think we usually wait to feel forgiving before we forgive.
And Alan says you'll wait forever. You can't think your way into the taste of an apple. You have to bite it. You can't understand the relief of forgiveness until you actually let go of the grudge. The insight is the reward for the action.
Okay, so we have the gate, which is goodness, and the way, which is renunciation. But Alan seems to realize that absolute self-sacrifice is a pretty high bar for a Tuesday morning. So he offers these byways to blessedness. These are like spiritual on-ramps.
Think of them as practical exercises. Yeah. If the gate is the destination, the byways are the paths we can walk right now to start moving in the right direction.
And the first one is right beginnings.
Right. He asks us to look at cause and effect. A beginning is a cause. He uses the analogy of a gardener. If a gardener wants a prize-winning pumpkin, he doesn't just hope for it, he focuses intensely on the seed and the soil.
And in this analogy, the seed is our thought.
Yes, Alan argues we are making beginnings all day long. A hateful thought is a wrong beginning. It's a weed seed. If you plant it, you are guaranteeing a harvest of bitterness later.
And a loving thought is a right beginning.
Exactly. So if your life feels chaotic, Alan would say, stop looking at the harvest. Start looking at the seeds you're planting in your head every single morning.
You have to be a master gardener of your own impulses.
You can't plant thistles and then be surprised when you don't get roses.
Then he moves to a byway that I found really challenging. Burden dropping. Now, usually when people talk about burdens, they mean external things. My boss is a burden.
Sure. My mortgage is a burden.
Right. But Alan flips that, doesn't he?
Completely. He argues that the burdens weighing us down are almost entirely internal. He lists them. Self-pity, worry, anxiety, bad habits.
He calls self-pity a canker. That is such a gross, evocative word.
It implies rot. And this is where Alan gets uncomfortable. He suggests that we hold on to these burdens because, on some level, we kind of like them.
Wait, we like suffering?
We like the self-definition it gives us. Look how hard my life is. Look how much I have to deal with. The ego loves to be the victim. But Alan says these are just hot coals we are choosing to clutch.
There's a quote here. Painful burdens are necessary, but only so long as we lack love and wisdom. That sounds a bit like he's blaming the victim, doesn't it? Oh, you're suffering. That's your fault.
It can sound harsh, but try to see it as empowering. He's saying suffering has a use. It's an alarm system. If your hand hurts, it's telling you that you're holding something hot. The pain is necessary to make you let go. Once you have the wisdom to say, oh, this resentment is burning me, you drop it.
And the moment you drop it, the burden and the pain is gone.
Suffering is self-originated, which means it can be self-terminated.
He also talks about the byway of hidden sacrifices. And again, he's not talking about, jumping in front of a train to save someone.
No, it's much quieter. He focuses on the sacrifice of greed. And not just hoarding money. He's talking about the desire to claim one's own, that possessive instinct.
This part really struck me. He says we should rejoice that others possess things, rather than coveting them for ourselves.
It's the ultimate antidote to envy. Think about how much mental energy is wasted comparing ourselves to others. Why did she get the promotion? Why does he have a better car? Alan says that is a heavy burden. If you can sacrifice that possessiveness, if you can look at your neighbor's joy and feel it as if it were your own, you have instantly doubled your capacity for happiness.
You're crowdsourcing your joy.
In a way, yes. You sacrifice the little self that wants to own things, and you gain a connection to the whole.
Okay, this brings us to the section of the book that I think is the most radical and honestly the most dangerous, if you misunderstand it. Section 3, seeing no evil.
This is the chapter that usually makes people close the book.
I mean, I almost did. Seeing no evil, it sounds like toxic positivity. It sounds like denial.
Yeah.
You know, if I see a bus coming at me, I shouldn't just ignore it.
Of course not.
And if I see injustice in the world, shouldn't I be angry? Is Alan telling us to be blind?
No, and he's very careful to make that distinction. He isn't saying you should ignore facts. If a man is a thief, he's a thief. Alan isn't telling you to pretend he's a saint. He is talking about understanding the physics of evil.
The physics.
Alan argues that evil is not a substantive power. It's not some cosmic force that rivals God. He calls it ignorance, or a shadow.
A shadow?
Right. A shadow can be terrifying. It can plunge a room into darkness, but it has no substance. You can't fight a shadow with a sword. You can only remove it by bringing in light.
He uses an illustration here that I thought was brilliant. The teacher and the hand.
It's so simple. A disciple asks a great teacher to explain the difference between good and evil. The teacher holds out his hand, fingers pointing down. Where is my hand pointing? The disciple says, down. Then the teacher just flips his hand up. Where now? Up.
Okay.
The teacher says, that is the distinction. It is the same hand, the same energy. Evil is just wrongly directed energy. Good is rightly directed energy.
That reframes everything. It means the bad guy isn't a monster. He's just pointing down.
He's a person using his divine energy in the wrong direction. He is operating out of ignorance.
But how does that work in the real world? If I have an enemy, someone actively trying to ruin my reputation or hurt my family, am I supposed to just say, oh, he's just pointing down?
Alan says yes. And this is the hardest part. He says if you fight evil with resentment, if you hate your enemy, then you are now practicing evil.
You're pointing your own hand.
You become the thing you hate.
So what's the alternative?
Pity and love. Alan writes, if he hate me, then he greatly needs and shall receive my love.
He greatly needs my love.
Wow. That's a stopper.
It changes the dynamic from fear to compassion. If you see someone screaming in a dark room, stumbling around breaking things, you don't hate them. You realize they're in the dark. They need light.
Right.
Alan argues that the evildoer injures himself far more than he injures you. He is destroying his own peace.
It takes the sting out of it. It stops being personal.
And that leads to your own peace. If you see no evil power aiming at you, but only ignorance flailing around, you are safe. You are untouchable in your own integrity.
This leads us into the final stretch of the book, where Alan lays out the simple laws of life. And again, he comes back to this idea of simplicity. He seems to think the universe runs like a clock.
He views the universe as invincible logic. He calls it uninvolved, uncompromising justice. Now, people often think of justice as punishment, but Alan means it more like mathematics.
Just simple cause and effect. Exactly. There is no favoritism. There is no caprice. God isn't waking up in a bad mood and deciding to punish you today. The universe is a machine that returns to you exactly what you put into it.
He has this incredibly bold statement. No evil can happen to a good man, either in life or death.
That comes from his belief in this absolute law. If you have removed the wrong beginnings, the seeds of sin from your heart, then external events cannot be evil to you.
Okay, so you might get sick. You might lose money.
Right, but you won't experience it as evil. You won't experience the suffering of the soul. You'll interpret it through a lens of peace.
But he also warns us about the teleportation fantasy. I think this is where the modern manifesting crowd might get it wrong. We want the result without the work.
Right. He uses the analogy of traveling to a distant city. If you want to reach a city called wisdom or peace, you have to travel the distance. You have to walk the path of renunciation.
We want to just beam there.
We want to be instantly transported from our bad habits to spiritual maturity. But Alan says the law doesn't allow it. You cannot cheat the math. You have to pass through the country of animal desires to reach the city of peace.
That's actually really empowering, though. Because if I'm not at the city yet, it doesn't mean the universe is against me. It just means I'm still walking.
It puts the responsibility squarely on us. We stop blaming fate or our parents or the government. We look at our feet and ask, am I walking towards the city or away from it?
So let's bring this home. Alan ends with his version of the good news. And knowing Alan, it's not about waiting for the afterlife.
No, he's very impatient with the idea of a future heaven. He says the good news is that there is peace for the troubled, here and now.
Here and now.
But there is a price tag, and the price is the unconditional abandonment of self.
There's the catch. We want the peace, but we want to keep our ego.
And Alan says you can't have both. We are clutching our burdens, our grievances, our stories about how we were wronged because we think those stories are us. We think if we drop them, we'll disappear.
But he says if you drop the burden, you don't disappear. You fly. He has this beautiful, tragic image of humanity just rushing down the highway of life, chasing illusions, and we're speeding right past these insignificant rest houses of true thought.
We think the answer is over the next horizon, so we ignore the byway of kindness we passed 5 miles back.
Yeah.
The challenge is to stop rushing, to pull over, to enter the byway.
It really redefines what it means to be unselfish. I think we're trained to think of unselfishness as a duty, like eating your vegetables. Ugh. I have to be unselfish now.
But Alan just flips it. He argues that unselfishness is joy. It is the only actual mechanism for happiness. It's the relief of putting down a heavy suitcase you've been carrying for 20 years.
That is a thought I want to leave everyone with. The idea that happiness isn't something you get. It's something that remains when you subtract the self.
Which is a terrifying proposition for the ego, but a liberating one for the soul.
So here is the challenge for this deep dive. Alan talks about burden dropping. We are all carrying something today. A worry about next week, a grudge against a coworker, a little nugget of self-pity.
Test the hypothesis.
Exactly. Don't just take Alan's word for it. Treat that burden like a hot coal. Open your hand, let it drop, and just see what happens. See if the peace he promised is actually sitting there, waiting for you.
It's a simple experiment, but be warned, if you do it, you might not be able to go back to complaining quite as easily.
A risk we'll have to take. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Always a pleasure.